morning, and thank you so much for having me. Like Jesse said, I'm here today from the Michigan Farmers Market Association, where I've worked with our Farmers Market Association for 7.5 years. But before I get started, I want to get a better sense for me, who's in the room. So, how many of you are farmers or market vendors? All right, a lot. Okay, good majority. And how many of you are market managers? Of course, there's overlap too between those two groups. How many of you serve on your farmers market leadership team, whether it's a board of directors, advisory group? All right, smaller portion. How many of you would consider yourself a partner of a farmers market? You work with an organization that supports. Okay, some of those folks as well. How many of you are members of the Minnesota Farmers Market Association? All right. Well, it looks like a good number of you are, and we have a great mix of people in the room, which I think is really important to making a successful farmers market association. And hopefully those of you that didn't raise your hand as being members will consider the importance of being part of a collective group that works towards moving farmers markets forward here in Minnesota, just as we've seen it happen in Michigan. So my goal today is to introduce myself, give you an idea of how I came into this world of farmers markets and the many hats that I wear in the food and agricultural world. Just like a lot of us in this profession, I think we're balancing a lot of different roles. And then I'm going to talk specifically about our Michigan Farmers Market Association and our organizational development, where we started, some of the initial challenges that we have, our key focal areas, and some of the lessons that we've learned along the way. And then we'll take a break for lunch, and I won't keep you from enjoying the great food that was described. And after lunch, I'll get into more details about some of the work that we do specifically with SNAP at farmers markets, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. All right, we're going to try switching mics. All right, does this sound better? All right, it seems like we have kind of different answers on different sides of the room. Okay, so we're gonna work on audio and continue from there. So I grew up in Frankenmuth, Michigan, on my family homestead. We had 155 acres, primarily agronomic crops. My parents no longer farmed, but went into the occupation of a slaughterhouse and retail meat shop. So my parents are butchers, and I learned at a pretty young age. I think I started working at Bernthal Packing when I was 14 years old, and learned pretty quickly that being a butcher wasn't my wasn't my forte. But what I did love is I loved being in the garden, and we had about an acre garden, and I remember very vividly. I think I must have been sometime when I was a junior in high school, when you're writing your college applications. I remember standing in our garden and thinking, I'm going to go to Michigan State to study horticulture because I never want to spend a day in an office. And I wanted to spend every day outside, and while that's still an ideal, it's I definitely spend now a lot of time in an office. But I went to Michigan State and as an undergrad for horticulture. I met my husband there when I was a senior. We went to Penn State to do our master's in horticulture. And we knew that we wanted to have our own farm, and I also knew that I wanted to get my PhD. But when we finished our master's, we decided that we needed to take some time and work on farms. And so we participated in a program called WOOF, Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms. And we took 6 months to travel and work on farms from Stockholm, Wisconsin. Some of you might be familiar with A to Z Produce and Bakery, where we were there in February, so it's cold in Wisconsin in February. But we worked with Ted Fisher and Robbie Bannon baking bread and cutting a lot of wood. We traveled to Paulden, Arizona, where we worked on Whipstone farm, where I learned for the first time how to shear sheep. and it was the first time that I actually drove a tractor, even though I grew up on a farm, and the farm I grew up on, there were certain things girls weren't allowed to do, which I have now broke through most of those barriers. And we traveled up the Pacific Coast until we were in Seattle, where I interviewed for the job as a project manager of the Michigan Farmers Market Association. And it was at a time where I was not looking for a job. We were on our kind of making our way back to Michigan, where our families were, where we're both from. We wanted to settle by our families and start a farm. And I was starting my PhD program. So there really was no reason that I needed to add a job onto that. But it was the first time I read the job description when we were in Portland, Oregon, and I was like, that looks like it was written for me. So I applied, I did a phone interview when we were in Seattle, and I got a phone call when we were in Vancouver that said, okay, you start next week. So in 4 days, we drove across the country, and I started, kind of hopped right in June of 2006. So I'll get into the whole detail about the Michigan Farmers Market Association in a bit, but we also decided at that time it was time to invest in our own farm. So we bought 2 acres in Bath, Michigan, which is just about 10 miles north of Lansing. It was a farm with some potential. So we definitely did a lot of pulling trees, prepping land. We planted cover crops to get the soil prepared, and we built our first hoop house in 2008, July of 2008. My husband Adam is the season extension outreach specialist for Michigan State, where he helps farmers all across our state build, construct hoop houses, and consider planting in them. And he was getting pretty tired of going to farms all across the state where they had hoop houses, and he was building hoop houses, and we didn't have one on our farm. So we built our first hoop house then, and 10 days later we were blessed with our first daughter, Lydia. So the hoop house got built, but plastic was a bit delayed, and she came about 5 weeks early. And so we started in November of 2008 with winter production. And at that point in time, we kind of felt like we had missed the opportunity, because in Michigan, probably like Minnesota, a lot of farmers markets are starting to close when you get to November. And a lot of farmers are winding down. But for us, it was really a blessing because we entered the market with a hoop house full of winter produce in November when most people were winding down. We started with an email listserv, and folks just stopping by our farm to buy. And it really kind of grew from there. We were invited to help our township start a farmer's market, and so that winter we engaged our community in some community conversations about what we wanted to see with a farmer's market in Bath. And we started selling at that farmer's market in July of 2010. We still sell there. It started as a year-round farmer's market. So we sell there every Thursday from 3 to 7 in the summer. And then we moved to our community center and sell every Thursday in the winter from 3 to 6. The year following, we were blessed with our second daughter, Allison. And we also transitioned into restaurant sales. So for us, we found that balancing 2 off-farm jobs and a PhD program and 2 young kids and some other contract work on the side, that farmers market sales were fantastic, but they didn't really work into our marketing schedule. And so we really focused on growing our business through restaurant sales. We've been farming now since 2008. We own 2 acres and rent 1, on which we have 6 production hoop houses, 30 by 96. We grow year-round, diversified vegetable production, and we sell at our Bath Farmers Market and to 10 local restaurants. So I tell you this to make the point that my job is not sitting in an office telling people across our state what I think is good for farmers markets. I actually see farmers markets from a lot of different perspectives. So I have the privilege of standing behind the table at a farmers market in our community, talking to our residents and selling our products. I chair our local farmers market board, so I sit on kind of a local governance structure. I have our statewide perspective, and I also shop at farmers markets all across Michigan, all across the country, and across the world when I get the opportunity to. So I've been a student of farmers markets for a long time, and it's something that I'm completely embedded in, just like so many people that are involved in our association. We started the Michigan Farmers Market Association in 2006, and how this really happened is that between 2003 and 2005, there were two Michigan State University MSU researchers that were studying farmers markets, Jim Bingen and Susan Smalley. They had been doing some roundtables and focus groups with farmers and market managers, and one of the themes that they were hearing was that there was a need for an association. There was a need for a group that brought together farmers market stakeholders. There was a need for networking. So Susan Smalley decided to write a grant to the Project for Public Spaces, and the title of the grant was Starting a Michigan Farmers Market Association. They ran that grant through a nonprofit called Michigan Food and Farming Systems, and the grant was funded. They started with a project leadership team, and they hired one part-time person, me, for 20 hours a week. This was at a time when in Michigan, just like across the country, the number of farmers markets was growing really rapidly. So in 2001, there were about 90 farmers markets in Michigan. When the association was started in 2006, there were about 150. And today, our best guess is between 320 and 340. We do maintain a database of all the farmers markets in Michigan, and we actually have the luxury of, in our suite of offices, the MSU research team that maintains the national database for ag marketing services. They're right next door. So we often share lists and work together to make sure that both lists are updated. However, that information is as good as the information that we get from the field. And there are many times where we're out doing a site visit and we drive by a community and we're like, oh, they have a farmer's market. So our list is changing all the time. We list on our website, we have a map, we identify our member markets with open umbrella icon, which is our logo. And then we identify non-member markets with just the plain green icon. So we do, as an association, think it's really important to track all farmers markets in the state, those that are part of our association and those that aren't yet. So what this means for us is that when we started, there were a lot of farmers markets. More than half of the farmers markets were new farmers markets, people that were just getting into the business, and people that really needed a lot of information about how to start a farmers market in Michigan and what the opportunities were for growth and how they could work together. So there was this huge demand for information and really kind of a place to go. We spent the first 9 months working together to draft our mission and vision. And so those 9 months included a lot of meetings where we'd have 20 to 100 people together in a room similar to this talking. And I did a lot of listening, and there were a lot of flip charts, and there were a lot of things that we came together to try and understand what did we collectively want to do. It was very loud and prominent that what we didn't want to do was we didn't want to be another regulatory body, and we didn't want to be another association that was defining rules and enforcing them. People in Michigan had had enough of that, and there were also other agencies and partners that we worked with where that was their role. What they needed instead was a central resource and an organization that supported them and worked with them to move them forward. And so our mission is to advance farmers markets, to create a thriving marketplace for local food and farm products. And our vision is to ensure that farmers markets are at the forefront of the local food movement, while we work to ensure that all residents have access to local healthy foods through farmers markets. And we're working so that Michigan farmers markets and farmers receive policy support. So a lot of the things that were in the earlier presentation about kind of some of the policies, statutes, rules, we do a lot of the very same work. In 2007, we launched our association, and we did this in April of 2007. We transitioned our project leadership team into a 11-person board of directors. That board of directors has 7 market managers that represent 7 different regions in Michigan. So we have regional representation. And we have 4 farmers who sell products that they grow on their own farm at Michigan farmers markets. And then we added 5 committees. At that time, we added an organization identity and governance committee, member benefits committee. We knew that it was really important to establish benefits of membership if we wanted people to join and pay money to be part of our association. Excuse me. We had a professional development committee, a community outreach committee, and an information resources committee. And this is the way that we envisioned we would pull together our members and volunteers to work together on issues that were really important to developing an association. So, excuse me, I'm getting over a cold and I'm succeeding, but slowly. So some of our initial challenges, our first 2 years we had a lot of momentum. We had a lot of people that were really interested in being involved. We had a lot of people contacting us. But the thing was is that our mission, as you can see, was very broad. And we were using our mission to make decisions, like how you should use a mission. And when people would come to us with ideas or with projects, we would say, okay, advancing farmers markets to create a thriving marketplace for local food and farm products. Yeah, that fits. And then they'd come to us with another idea and another idea. And really, our mission is very broad in the sense that we were agreeing with nearly every project that was presented to us. And so we found ourselves being pulled in a lot of different directions. We also, I say here relied heavily, and I should have said relied exclusively on grant funding. So our first 2 years we were completely grant funded, which means that when you're grant funded and our staff was grant funded, you're funded to meet the deliverables that you promised for that grant, but you don't necessarily have resources to do all of the things outside of the grant that need to get done. And there were a lot of those. And so for the first couple of years, I was paid to work 20 hours a week, and I worked at least 50 hours a week, so that was a pretty significant volunteer contribution, just like the tens and 20s of volunteers that worked on our committees that were doing the same type of thing. We lacked the organizational capacity to be able to do everything that we wanted to do, and we really needed to focus on building that. And we needed a process to be able to engage our members in decision making, engage our committee members, so that it made sense how we were all working together and what we were doing. And then we also have this reality that farmers markets are different. All across Michigan, farmers markets differ in a number of different ways. And that was something that we had to come together and understand, how can we work together when we're working on projects that are the same, but they seem different because of the different ways in which we're structured. So some of the ways in which we're different are our management structures and our policies. Some of our markets require insurance, some don't. Some of our markets charge vendor fees, some don't charge any, and there's a huge range. Our markets all differ in who they allow to sell there and the products that are allowed as part of their market mix. There's obviously a different customer mix because every farmer's market is as unique as the community in which it functions. The atmosphere and special events that are held are different. Some people are really interested in holding cooking demonstrations, others want live music, and some want it to just be a place where you go and shop and you don't have any of that other hoopla. So there's different opinions on that, and some markets are really interested in participating in food assistance programs, and others are either not interested or still learning about it. So we had a lot of kind of differences to overcome and a lot of things that we needed to figure out how to work through. So for us, 2009 was a real kind of turning point and a year of opportunities. At that time, we got 2 really important grants. We got a USDA Farmers Market Promotion Program grant. It was a 2-year, $92,000 grant that allowed us to focus on the things that we needed to focus on. So we invested that money in strategic planning and strategic coaching to support that. We invested it in the professional development of our board, our staff, our committee members, and pretty broadly our members. And we also developed a market manager certificate program, because our real goal was to help professionalize the job of market managers. More than half of our market managers in Michigan are still volunteers, tremendous volunteers that give so much of their time. And we are really looking to help convince decision makers in local government and local communities that this is an important job and it should receive the professional attention that it deserves. So what this allowed us to do is it allowed us to hire 2 additional staff people. So I was still, at this time, probably part-time, maybe 3/4 time. We hired an administrative assistant, and we also hired a coordinator for our food assistance partnership. I'll talk more about that focus of the work, but that really allowed us, by having a person in a position to focus on food assistance, was really essential for us being able to increase the number of farmers markets that participate in food assistance programs. And we also had the resources to bring people back together again, to talk about and kind of focus what we were doing as an organization so that we could all work together. Which we were doing. We had a committee structure. We had a lot of people really interested in supporting the association, and we just needed to help our volunteers feel productive and feel like there was a good way in which they could use their skill set to connect with the work that we were doing. And so we talked again a lot about what we wanted the association to be, and we focused on what are our shared values. So why are we here together in the room? Why are we here together as part of this collective association? What is the work, what's important to us as we do this work? We focused on integrity and equality, on community and belonging. That was important for us together to feel like we're a community of farmers markets that are working together. And really important, we came to the realization that diversity and unity can coexist together. That we can have a great diversity of folks in a room, and that we can become unified, at least on some shared common goals. So this does not mean that we have to agree on everything. And actually, we have a lot of disagreements still. But it means that when we identify common goals, that we can come together and work towards those. And we've really focused on being able to do that. So we started our strategic plan. And this might sound kind of silly, and maybe it is, but our strategic plan I carry with me every day. And we have a strategic plan that's like no other strategic plan I've ever seen. And I actually didn't read books on strategic planning. And I actually didn't participate in webinars or day-long sessions on how to do strategic plans. And we didn't hire someone to come in and write a strategic plan report for us that we could then put on a shelf and look at 10 years later. What we did is we hired a facilitator to come in and help us for 2 days at a board level, talk about what we wanted to do at our association, and then we took and just kind of summarize that for us, help us, get some clumps together and figure out how we were, what we were gonna kind of work on and kind of organize those ideas. But then it was me, who has no expertise in strategic planning at all, that put our ideas into kind of a spreadsheet template to-do list that was organized by a committee. And now it's a way that we all are collectively looking at the same picture, the same to-do list, and it's a way in which we work together. And it's been really fantastic for us, because now someone from Menominee, Michigan can come to me and say, I really love the work that we're doing. Our farmers market's struggling with this. I want to help the association during the winter months because our market's not running and I have a little bit of extra time. And I can say, okay, this box here has not been done. Are you willing to help with this? And it's really a good way for us to see the big picture, but then also hone that in and see the little things that need to be done so that we can move forward together as a group. Because you all know that whether it's your community farmers market or it's your statewide association, that there's so much work to be done. And we're always prioritizing what needs to happen when and how can we work on this together. So our strategic plan has really been a solution for us to grow and to be able to engage a lot of people in the work that we do. We've asked ourselves why. Why are we doing this? How are we going to do it? Which was really important. So there's not just a lot of big ideas, but also how are we going to get the work done that we need to? And And then what are we going to measure? What do we have to have, completed to know that we've been successful? We divided our work into 5 key focal areas. So we took that committee structure that we had initially and we reworked it. And so we now have an organizational development committee. We have a marketing and membership committee. We still have our professional development committee. That one stayed with us the whole time. A policy committee, and our food assistance partnership. And our food assistance partnership really started in 2007. It just didn't have a name until 2008. And then it became part of our strategic plan when we did our strategic planning in 2010. So I want to go through kind of what each of these focal areas are and what the work that we do as a statewide association. So our Organizational Development Committee, their goal is to develop an operating budget and organizational infrastructure that fully supports MIFMA's goals. And I would say that to me, as someone with a background in horticulture, this is like just not that exciting to me. And someone that's involved in farmers markets. But the thing is that this is really exciting to a lot of people. And we have tremendous committee co-chairs and members of our association that are have a legal background, or they have an accounting background, or they run other organizations, and they have really, in a lot of ways, driven this work. So I should mention that all of our committees are set up in a way that they all have a chair, or they have a team of co-chairs that lead the work. They all mostly meet monthly at a set time by conference call. So our Professional Development Committee meets the 3rd Thursday of every month at 11 a.m. And we have a conference call line, and people call in all across the state. And we are also in 2 time zones, so we deal with that. It's a really good way for people to plug in. We do have a couple committees that take some time off during the summer months because it's a really busy time for farmers markets and farmers. But it's a regular set meeting schedule. And everything initially work and decisions initially go to a committee level. So if we're working on a project and even initial budgets that we've drafted, they go to a committee. That committee discusses it. Then we'll make a recommendation to our board of directors. And then our board of directors also typically meets monthly, October through May. And then there's some break in the summer there. And our board of directors is then taking action on recommendations from all 5 of our committees. And so it's a way that we still have a really engaged 11-member board of directors, but we have between 6 and 12 people on each of 5 committees. So we've been able to engage more than 30 members, and this has taken time. So it did not happen overnight. But by having a structure like this where people feel like they can contribute, then we were able to have 30 to 50 other volunteers involved at the committee level, all involved in making decisions about the work that we're going to do together. And that has really increased ownership about what we want to do at a statewide level. So back to our Organizational Development Committee, they focus on financial strategies. They focus on paperwork and reporting. Right now, we're actually working on our own 501c3 paperwork. We have operated under Michigan Food and Farming Systems as our fiscal sponsor, and we've agreed as part of our strategic plan in 2013 to revisit that, and we're branching out on our own now. They establish all of our MIFMA policies, from our logo use guidelines to our personnel policies and volunteer policies. And they establish our position descriptions, approve when we hire add-on to our team, and our evaluation protocols. A lot of people ask about, well, what do your budgets look like? And so I wanted to include that. Last year, we're operating on about $191,000, and that comes from a variety of different sources. And I think that to be successful, you have to have a diverse funding stream. When we started the grants category, which is this 23% here, that was our whole circle. Our whole circle was just grants. And we've worked really hard to be able to diversify that. So we bring in funding now through membership dues. through professional development. So for us, that's our conference and our market manager certificate program and other events that we do, trainings, webinars, on-farm field days. We host 2 farmers markets at the Capitol, and that brings it, we have some vendor fees and sponsorship for that. We do fee-for-service work, and so for us that means we provide rapid market assessments for member markets. We help, if an organization comes to us, we help organize, special farmers markets. So for example, the Michigan Council of Foundations was having a conference and they wanted to have a farmers market as part of their health fair. And so we would organize an event for them. We have a tiny bit of fundraising revenue, and we're actually not very good at fundraising, but we are working at it, and it's definitely some place that we need to improve. We have subcontracts, so this is, for us, work that we get through other organizations to help them meet the deliverables, and I mentioned membership already. And it's also been really important for us to, as an organization, to grow our equity fund. And that means every year we're trying to come out in the black, even by just a little bit, and have some profit so that eventually we will be in an organizational position to apply for more grants that are based on a reimbursement basis. So some of you may know, even for your farmers market or for the statewide association, some grants are, you only get the money after you've done the work, and that's really hard when you don't have a lot of money to begin with, especially if you're not working through a fiscal sponsor that's able to help kind of float that money for you. So that's another place where we're going. Our marketing and our membership committee really is focused on increasing Michigan Farmers Market's awareness of MIFMA, so people know that we exist, and to grow our membership. There's a huge opportunity for us to do more and better work as we involve more people in supporting the organization through their membership. So we have, that group has committed to improving our online presence, making sure that people can find us easily, evaluating and enhancing our membership benefits. And very early on, I was so naive to think, back in 2006 or 2007, that of course people would join an association just because they believed in it. Well, that really does not happen at all. Maybe there are a few people that join our association because they believe in the work that we do. Most of them join the association because they believe in the work that we do, and they get benefits, like discounts to our conferences, or they get reduced rates on market assessments, or they get reduced rates on insurance, or reduced rates on marketing and promotional materials. And so those are the reasons that people have really felt like it's an investment, because for some of them, when they join, when they attend one of our professional development events, it makes sense for them to become a member. And we're really trying to continue to build up those opportunities. So this is just an example of our website, which we work on probably 5 days a week. We have a increasing Facebook and Twitter presence, and that's really been something that's completely been embraced by our marketing and membership committee. We have 12 administrators on our Facebook page, and for me, this was initially one of the hardest points to give up control, because I thought, and I still believe it's so important for us to give off a professional, to give off a real professional presence. And I was struggling with that on Facebook, where people, they don't have to be members of our association, anyone can post on our page. But it has been an incredible asset to have our marketing and membership committee completely take this over. We have a minimum of 3 posts a week, and the market managers from across the state that are on that committee identify something that they think is interesting, and it's been really a way for us to diversify our content and have a lot of different posts on there that pertain to different things. And so that is now owned by that committee, and they do a really nice job of that. And our membership has grown over the years. As part of our strategic planning, we identified that our target audience is farmers markets and farmers and vendors. And so that's the audience that we specifically focus on in terms of offering membership benefits. We do have categories for household and organizational friends, because there are some people that want to support you because they believe in this work, but we really don't, at this point in time, focus on providing benefits of membership directly to that part of the audience. Our professional development committee focuses on really increasing professional opportunities for market manager through lifelong professional development. And so this committee probably has the most work of all of our committees, because they have committee members that have so many new ideas, and I think because we have a lot of demand from our association for new opportunities. Every year we have a Farmers Market Focus Day at our Great Lakes Fruit, Vegetable, and Farmers Market Expo. We also are doing rapid market assessments, which I mentioned. We have an annual conference that started as a Farmers Market Manager boot camp, and that was really a training session that was really kind of developed for new and beginning market managers. So we were identifying those markets that had less than 5 years of experience, and that has now grown into a 2-day conference with 3 tracks. Those tracks are still for our market manager boot camp. We also have an advanced market manager track. We define that as market managers who have been in the business for more than 5 years. And then we also have a farmer vendor track, and we don't police those tracks at all. So that's how we organize the conference and develop topics and speakers. But really, because all of us, are in different roles and sometimes need different content, people are welcome to choose whatever makes most sense for them. As Jesse said, we started our Market Manager Certificate Program in Michigan in 2011. And we started that as a 6-day face-to-face certificate program. And that's how it was for the first 2 years. We had people come together and over the course of 6-day-long sessions to focus on all the topics that we thought were essential to market management. And this year, for the first time, well, not this year, but in 2014, it'll run January 24th through February 22nd. We are doing a hybrid model. So we have still felt that it's really important for us to have those face-to-face connections because we get a lot of feedback that the networking is essential, and that when people get to work together in a cohort and meet each other, they then become resources for each other throughout the course of not just that year, but the course of being a market manager. And so we're trying to really focus on continuing to build those relationships. And so our certificate program is set up where the first 2 days, just that market manager certificate program cohort is together during 2-day-long sessions. They're held on a Friday and Saturday, so our market managers still have to take 1 day off work if they have another off-farm job. And then we have 7 online webinars. And these webinars are run on Mondays and Wednesdays from 6 to 8:30, and we are starting to partner with our other Midwest regional farmers market associations, and so we are happy to offer all of you our member rate on these webinars, just like we'll do for Illinois and Ohio and Wisconsin as well. And then we end with a day of market manager presentations. This is the one piece where some of our cohort grumble because they're uncomfortable presenting. But what we found is that this is really important to our program because our market managers need to be able to get up in front of their city council and convince their city council why they need support. Or they need to be able to stand in front of their DDA board and tell their DDA why their farmers market is essential to the development of their downtown. Or they need to be able to go to their local foundation and say, you should support us because this is what we're doing for our community. And that's part of being able to present why their farmers market is important is really essential. So we have some of our market managers develop complete presentations based on where they're preparing to go in 2 weeks to their city council or something like that. We do on-farm field days, so these are just more geared towards farmers and vendors. And the list goes on and on of things that we want to do with our professional development committee. So we're talking about more online distance learning opportunities, more resources for market managers and farmers and vendors, and continuing education programs. So in 2014, we'll have certified more than 100 market managers in Michigan, and for those that are already certified, we're developing continuing education credits so that they can get recertified every 3 to 5 years. Our policy committee is a committee that kind of evolved out of our desire to influence our decision makers to support farmers and farmers markets. We participate in Ag Day at the Capitol. We actually host 2 farmers markets on the lawn of our state capitol, where we bring 65 vendors to the front lawn of our state decision makers and really showcase and highlight Michigan agriculture and what a farmer's market can do for an area. We reach out to our legislators and we're talking to them about the benefits of farmers markets. And it's really kind of at this policy level where we also identified the need to define a farmer's market. And so from the conversation earlier on, that sounded so familiar because when we started kind of some of our policy efforts specifically focusing on direct-to-consumer egg sales and cottage food law, we found also that there was a need to define farmers market. We had so many conversations of what is local and how should we define this? And we actually skirted it completely. That's how we decided to move forward. But we define a farmer's market as a public and recurring assembly of farmers or their representatives selling direct-to-consumer food and products which they have produced themselves. So that's how we define it. And then we add a sentence. In addition, the market may include a variety of vendors as determined by market management. And so that's, Kathy, where we were trying to get to, is that all of our markets have different policies and all of our markets have different definitions. And so we tried to, identify the heart of a farmer's market as producers that were growing or that were selling what they grew or made. And then we tried to, leave it open enough so farmers markets could still have the decision-making authority to determine what works well for them in their community. Because we also didn't want farmers markets to be like this is a kind of fuzzy picture, but that top picture is the farmers market that greeted me when I came out of the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport. I was like, oh, a farmer's market right here, where everything is prepackaged and very little is from Minnesota. We wanted a farmer's market to be a place where farmers are selling things that they've grown and that there is a clear definition to it. We also work to very clearly articulate what our policy priorities are, which allows us to work with other organizations and allows us easily to support policies that come before us for consideration if we're going to post it, sign on to a letter of support. Every year we revisit these. So our policy priorities for this year are to establish relationships with other food and farming organizations that are in alignment with our mission. We're looking for other organizations that have clearly articulated their priorities. We support federal programs that align with our mission, and we support state policy that advance farmers markets. And so we've worked really hard with cottage food bill in Michigan that just in July of this year, after 7 years, we now have wine sales at farmers markets in Michigan. We've worked really hard on direct producer to consumer egg sales, and so there's a lot of state policies that we're working with to better and more clearly define. And then we support programs, food assistance program, that ensure food access. So this is a good transition into one of our kind of biggest pieces of work, and that's our food assistance partnership. Our food assistance partnership started in January of 2007 when it wasn't named. Shortly after it was before we actually even officially launched our association. And what had happened is in October, November of 2006, I had the opportunity to travel to Iowa, where there was a conference on, at that time, food stamps at farmers markets. And on the way back, I was riding with someone from our Department of Human Services and someone from our Department of Community Health, and I realized we have 3 farmers markets in our state out of 150 that accept food stamps. What is going on here? Like, why are more people not accepting food stamps? And I was told, don't even push that issue. It's not going to go anywhere. So of course that was like the perfect catalyst for me to push the issue, because I really needed to understand more why are farmers not, why do farmers not have access to this additional income, and why are farmers markets not really a part of this food assistance program any longer? And so in January of 2007, we worked with the Michigan Food Policy Council to pull together our state agencies to talk about the issue. And we started meeting monthly and pulling together farmers markets to really identify that this is a need and this is something that we were going to address. And then it eventually helped that our governor put it on the Michigan dashboard. And that gave us a little, kind of more statewide clout, that the number of farmers markets accepting bridge cards, which is our state SNAP card, is now a performance measure of healthy communities. So we have state support from our governor's office. And one of the things that when it comes to training and technical assistance that we found is that a lot of our work initially focused on accepting SNAP at farmers markets. But the thing is that there's a lot of federal food assistance programs that can be accepted at farmers markets, and there's a lot of confusion between all of those programs. And a lot of that is, rightly so, because these programs have different names at the federal program, at the state program name, and then what they look like in a farmer's market. And so there's a lot of confusion, as to what is what. And we found that some of our markets thought they were participating in programs because they were accepting the Farmers Market Nutrition Program in Michigan, which we call Project Fresh, and didn't even realize that there were other programs that they had access to. So this is part of our very initial, breaking this down was part of our very initial start to clarifying these programs and how they can be increased at farmers markets. So let me focus on SNAP a little bit here. In 2006, like I said, we had 3 farmers markets that were accepting bridge cards, and this year, in 2013, we have 133. We have put a lot of time and effort and resources in building partnerships to increase this number. It's been a huge focus of our association and a huge focus of more than 50 organizations and individuals that are involved in our partnership to work towards making this happen. But there's still a huge opportunity for us to increase. And when I say this, in Michigan now, it's 0.51% of SNAP sales are redeemed at farmers markets. That is so minuscule. Like, we can feel really good, about ourselves and the work that we've done, but it's still 0.5% is redeemed at farmers markets. That means there's a huge opportunity for us to continue to increase both the number of farmers markets and the amount of money. And so I will say that we have had a lot of philosophical conversations about federal food assistance programs and nutrition programs. But a lot of times when we talk to farmers, it ends up, the conversation ends up as, do you want to make more money? Do you want to be able to accept another form of payment that you haven't been able to accept in the past? And for our farmers in Michigan, last year that was over $1 million in SNAP sales. And so that is important, and that is economically important to our farmers markets. So another question often comes, where does our funding come from and what allows us to do this work? I can't tell you how many people have volunteered to move this work forward, how many organizations have contributed. There's just so much time and resources that have gone into this. A lot of in-kind support. We did in 2007, which was the year that we started, we got a grant from the Michigan Department of Community Health. I think it was $11,000 to do a pilot with 7 farmers markets to accept EBT. In 2008, we got another grant to do some outreach for Project Fresh, which is our farmers market nutrition program. In 2009, at the same time we got our farmers market promotion program grant, we also got a specialty crop block we also got a specialty crop block grant, and we got a farmers market promotion program grant that we had written in conjunction with the Food Policy Council. So that money was flowing through the Food Policy Council, but specifically to support this work. And then we have contracts to do to work with Double Up Food Bucks in Michigan, and also Hoophouses for Health, which I'll briefly describe both of those. So Double Up Food Bucks is a SNAP incentive program. In Michigan, Fair Food Network out of Ann Arbor has kind of given a statewide focus on a SNAP incentive program. We had about 95 farmers markets this year participating, where they have raised private funds to be able to double someone's SNAP purchase at participating farmers markets up to $20. And those $20 are specifically used for Michigan-grown fresh fruits and vegetables. So when you combine our SNAP sales in Michigan with Double Up Food Bucks, so this is the Double Up Food Bucks sales, and this is SNAP sales, it's close to $2 million worth of product that's purchased at Michigan farmers markets. And we also work with the Michigan State University Center for Regional Food Systems on their Hoophouses for Health project, which is a project that's been designed with two main objectives: to build season extension capacity for Michigan farmers and to increase access to healthy foods. And so basically how this plays out is that farmers at participating farmers market get zero interest 5-year loans to be able to invest in a hoop house up to $15,000, and they pay that back by accepting vouchers at the farmers market that were distributed to Head Start families. And so they're vulnerable families that we work with our Michigan Head Start Association. They give the vouchers to families. They can use 25% of those vouchers for their own programming at their Head Start. And then the others they distribute to families, and families then bring them to the farmers market and buy produce with them. And so farmers are actually paying back their hoop house loans by giving away produce to vulnerable families in their communities or where they're selling farmers markets, where they're selling at farmers markets. So this year, this is what we look like organizationally. We've grown a lot. We still have our board of directors. We still have our committees. We've added our manager of programs and partnerships, who's actually our food assistance partnership coordinator that we kind of promoted to a broader position. We have a Hoophouses for Health intern, our administrative assistant. We have a web developer that we work with on a contract basis, and we are hiring a membership coordinator probably this month sometime. That just got approved 2 days ago. And we have dreams to be bigger, and we have a lot of work to do. So that's part of what keeps us going, is that every time that we reach a goal, or every time that we accomplish something, we celebrate, and then we figure out what our next goal is. And we always have a vision of the future in front of us. So I just want to share a couple lessons learned before we break for lunch. And this is kind of a quick summary of some of the things that I've taken away from the last 7.5 years with our association. For us, leadership and teamwork go hand in hand. And so at any different times, someone in our association is leading a project, and it's not just one person. It's not just me as the director. It's the president of our board, or it's the chair of our committee, or it's our student intern at some point in time. And we are all working together to support each other. And so many days we have the role of a support staff, or I am volunteering for something, and I think that's really important, that we all are working together as a team, and we are all sharing in those leadership roles. We have learned that diversity and unity can coexist especially if you define what you're working towards together, and that it's okay that we're different, as long as we have some shared common goals. Farmers, I say this a lot, that the absolute best thing about farmers markets is that they are built on relationships. And sometimes the hardest part about farmers markets and farmers market associations is that they're built on relationships. And so we are always figuring out how we can work together better and respect each other and figure out ways in which we can communicate. And so I think that those relationships are essential. And it's not just about the title that someone holds or the position that they're in. It's about getting to know someone and who their family is and why they're at that farmer's market doing what they're doing. And so if we can invest in each other and in building those relationships, we're going to get farther faster. I've learned that your mission is your map, and you need to use it. And we use it all the time. And sometimes your mission needs to be focused a little bit more, and we've done that. And I think that makes sense at both association level and at your individual market level. You should have a mission statement. You should have clearly articulated why you're doing what you're doing. And then you should use it to make decisions. And you need to measure impacts, and you need to tell your story, because it's together, our collective stories, that are really providing the vibrancy that organizes and strengthens our movement. Our movement in Michigan, our movement in Minnesota, and our movement across the country. And I think that is really what is so important to this work. So with that, you have fantastic food, I know, for lunch. And I'm not going to keep you from it. And I just want to thank you for having me. And there may be questions, and I'll be here through lunch, and I'll also be here after lunch. So thank you.